Hello everybody and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol roster building video, and today we are building a list that I've wanted to do something like this for a while now, but at time of recording we recently had the monsters revealed for the Monsters Unleashed box coming relatively soon at time of upload, I believe, depending exactly how I work that out. But yeah, we recently had them revealed fully to us in a panel to play, which is really exciting because now they are open for list building at the very least, even if we can't quite get them on the table yet. So yeah, super exciting. There's some really cool models there, and I wanted to play around with a couple of them, notably two really useful things for this series. The first one just being that Dracula's leadership is another Emma style leadership, so we have access to a third of that style leadership, which is really good. We can use that a lot for this series to be able to kind of do more thematic things and have some flexibility. So that's always great, and we will be taking advantage of that today. And the other thing is two of the models revealed have some form of crackback attack. And that is the point of our roster today, is everybody on the team is going to punish you really hard for attacking our team. So we've already mentioned them, we might as well go ahead and throw them in right now. The first character we're going to be including in this list is, of course, Dracula himself. And that is because of his eternal hunger superpower here. So after an attack against him is resolved, he can use this superpower. If the attacker is within range 3, he's going to get to immediately attack that attacker. This is obviously, yeah, this is just a really good strike back. It lets him use any of his attacks so he can heal off of it. And of course, really importantly, is he's going to be providing the Thralls of Dracula leadership. So there might be a couple other ways we can be affiliated with one or two other affiliations, but in case we don't have many options there, we'll always be able to fall back to Dracula. And of course, the other character that we had revealed with a crackback here is, of course, Werewolf by Night. And yeah, similar deal. He's got the Midnight Massacre here. So he's going to be able to make specifically the Savage Slash attack against his attackers. And that's going to be costing him 3. So, of course, we're going to include him there as well. And you'll see no affiliations listed for him yet because they have not been officialized. The document has not been uploaded at time of recording, and probably not by time of upload either. So we're not too out of date here. I'm hopefully not getting too far ahead in this series, but I've just been grinding these out lately. So we'll see. But yeah, that's going to be our first two. So next, we're going to take a look at the one of the handy little tags here, which is the Counterattack tag. Now, notably, I think there's a character missing from this. I'm pretty sure Venom is supposed to be on this list as well, but we're just going to add this entire list here. I mean, Daredevil's got his Man Without Fear here, allowing him to crack back while he's on his healthy side. He does unfortunately lose it on the injured side, but still, it's really good. It's also one of the few crackbacks, possibly the only crackback, that doesn't specify once per turn. So yeah, that's just good. Killmonger 2, I actually didn't even realize until doing research for this video that he has a crackback attack, and he totally does. It's a range 2 only, and it has to be his vibranium weapons, but still, it's only a 2 cost, so that's pretty nice. And yeah, he's gonna earn a spot there. And then, of course, we have Sabretooth as well, one of the OG crackback models here, with, what is it, Untamed Force? Yeah, Untamed Force. This one also does specify the type of attack. It has to be a Claw Slash. So again, you're really pushing that range 2, but he does have that aggressive as well, and you can choose to stack that to aggressive first and then get your crackback. So you can play around with it a little bit there. Another nice thing with Sabretooth specifically is we're also handing out bleeds, which is going to synergize with that leadership relatively nicely. And of course, I think Werewolf by Night does the same here. Yeah, he can hand out bleed on either of his attacks actually. So, we're getting a little bit of extra synergy with the leadership there too, which is always nice to have. And then, of course, because he doesn't show up here, we are just going to manually search for Venom, who again is going to be synergizing with that bleed that's automatically getting handed out by the symbiote tendrils here. But it is the So Many Stacks attack here, which is after an attack against him is resolved, he gets to use that superpower and just immediately crack back. So yeah, he's pretty good. He's got a really solid crackback ability, and he's also just going to provide a nice little bit of utility here, being able to yank some enemy characters in and just go to town on them. So yeah, really nice to have that there. Now we do have a few other slots and we have to get somewhat creative for these other slots because I believe, you guys can yell at me in the comments if I'm incorrect on this one, but I believe that is all of the characters that have crackbacks for when they are attacked. Not counting things like Counter-Strike and things like that. So we're going to try and be a little creative here. I don't want to just be like, okay, let's just pick 4 models that have Counter-Strike, because honestly, Counter-Strike isn't very scary most of the time. I mean, half the time it just whiffs. So we're going to avoid that. We're going to pick characters that actually can punish things and make your opponent really be just scared to attack anyone on your team, sort of thing. So I think one of the first models that strikes me as being good for that fit is actually Gwenom. And Gwenom has a crackback when you attack one of her allies. So there's a little bit of a risk here with running Gwenom in this, in that if you're running Gwenom and everyone else on the team punishes you when you attack them, and Gwenom attacks you uh, Gwenom punishes you if you attack anyone that's not her, they're just going to target her out right away. You can maybe take advantage of that. You can play around with that and try and make that so Gwenom's never the good target, sort of thing. So you could maybe take that to your advantage, but I do think she can potentially make some really obnoxious lines there. And with Venom in the list as well, we do have access to Lethal Protector, so we could always Lethal Protector and attack onto Gwenom. Now it's going into Venom, and then they both crack back, which is a really fun little combo that the two of them can do. So yeah, I think Gwenom is my next pick here. Now the next model I want to include for this crackbacks thing is a character that doesn't actually crackback themselves, but they just have a really obnoxious aura that's going to punish your opponent for any attacks they make. And I am, of course, talking about Loki, Prince of Lies. So he has his oh my, what a pity. So if you would target him or an allied character within range 3 of him, or after one of his attacks is resolved, but we don't care about that part. That's not punishing our opponent. If the enemy character's rolls contain any skulls, they're going to take a damage. So now you get to combine that with what we were already talking about, doing something like the Venom Gwenom combo, where you Lethal Protector, or maybe they just chose to punch someone else and Gwenom was in range. They rolled a skull in their thing, so they've already taken a damage. You're cracking back, and then you're cracking back with another character. You can really get the chain going and just make your opponent terrified to punch anyone on your team. So Loki, Prince of Lies, takes that next roster slot for us. All right, with only 2 slots left, I think we're going to actually continue to look inside that newer Asgard box there, and we're also going to take a look at the best Counter-Strike in the game, because that just kind of makes sense. I said I didn't want to pick just 4 Counter-Strike models, and I'm holding true to that. This is going to be the only one. But yeah, I say the Nay villain is just a really strong crackback. Um, yeah, I got nothing. 7 dice doing damage on crits and wilds. You average like 1.8 or something like that. The exact number is failing me right now. 1.75, right? That's how math works. So you average about 2 damage with this. You can spike on it as well. Obviously, you couldn't fail. Still, it does still whiff on occasion, but yeah, it's just another extra source of that. So of course we want to take advantage of that, and again, create some obnoxious combo with Loki there. While mentioning that, that does also open the door to the Asgard affiliation, being an 11 threat between these 2 models. So at 15, we can run a 4 threat with them. We also have a 5 threat in the list, so we can run them at 16 as well. So we now have Asgard available at a couple different threat levels if we really want to just kind of push that, 15 Gamma Researcher sort of thing, where we can play like these two, and then either Werewolf or Dracula, and then you're just using Loki's leadership, which is a fairly solid leadership. So yeah, I think that there's actually a lot of really interesting play with that. Or rather, that was 16. The Gamma Researcher would be like you put them, and you probably don't do Gwenom as low threat as 15 because it just paints a massive target on her back. You probably do either, well, any of these 4 really would probably work, but yeah, you've got lots of options there. So we have an Asgard version of this list now, and that's pretty useful to just give us a little bit of variety, because obviously that's going to also help us fill some cards with Thralls of Dracula not having anything outside of the leadership. For our final slot in this roster, though, I decided I think the character that I want to do, that I felt is maybe not necessarily the most punishing, because I definitely could have thrown in some of those characters that have like martial prowess, where they add 2 dice and or something like that. They roll 5 dice, and if they don't take damage, they damage you. Those definitely fit the theme of the list really, really well, and I did consider doing something like that, but I don't think you have the tools with this list to boost that up often enough that you're always going to get to punish, because I think those are relatively inconsistent to begin with. So I wanted to focus on some more consistent things, and as I say that, I'm realizing that the thing that I did pick also isn't very consistent, but in my opinion is at least more interesting. So the thing that I'm going with here is actually Shang-Chi, and that's because of his dragon chases its tail here. So basically, if he doesn't take damage from an attack that is within range 2, so again, this is probably one of the most restrictive versions of this in this list, he gets to use this superpower and throw the enemy character small. Now, it is a lot more restrictive. It's not going to happen as often as your other crackbacks in this list, or your Counter-Strike, or, Loki's skull thing. But it is a really powerful effect. Any size throw as well. So, this could be a Hulk that punched him, didn't get anything through, and he has 4 dice counting blanks, so that's pretty good. Doesn't get anything through, and now Hulk's taken a trip and he's actually bumping into another model as well. Damage all around, really, really rude. Yeah, I just think this one makes a lot of sense. He has something kind of similar on this on his flip here. He has the Wild Goose Leaves the Flock, where he's going to basically get to walk and drag the attacking character with him. This one can be really, really interesting in combination with something like Gwenom, because you can basically drag them into Gwenom range. So you can do some kind of cool things like that there. But yeah, the main thing is for that Dragon chases its tail, basically self heroes for hire sort of thing. It's at least interesting. I think it's more interesting than just another kind of Counter Strike or one of those types of models. So that's going to be my 10th slot here. But I think if you're trying to build your own version of this, these last 4 slots here really can be switched out with any of your favorite, like martial prowess or what is it, quick draw that Cyclops has. Those types of models. They have very, very similar abilities there that are playing to the same theme. So if you prefer that, by all means, go for it. But I like this one because it just puts a little bit of extra variety in there, and some more, more unique abilities like Loki's, like Shang-Chi's, and yeah, I think they work really well together, especially with some of the synergies that you get with some of these characters. But that is going to be our 10 characters here, so we're going to go ahead and move into tactics cards, where right out the gate, we know we're going to be wanting Mr. Dracula's affiliation. All right, I was worried for a second that it wasn't actually going to be up here yet, but of course it is, because Jarvis Protocol is absolutely amazing. So we do have the Thralls of Dracula leadership here, so that's great. And then we already mentioned it, so we are going to be bringing Lethal Protector as well for Venom. As far as affiliations go, though, we are also available in the Asgard affiliation here. We have a Defender's Leader, but unfortunately I believe that's the only, well, sorry, we have 2 Defenders models, but both of them are only 4 threat. So unfortunately, we don't have any way of playing defenders at even 15 threat. So we're not going to be hitting the defenders affiliation here. Again, that's something you could probably play with those extra slots if you wanted. Maybe switch out, Thor. You'd lose the Asgard affiliation, obviously, but you could throw in something that has just like a counterattack. Like is Elektra actually defenders? Yeah, she is. So you could do like Elektra or something like that if you wanted to be able to um, have the defenders affiliation instead. Then you get three defenders characters, and I don't know if there would be other options. I guess Taskmaster would help you with any affiliation you wanted to play. So you actually have a reasonable amount of options to build something like this in a lot of different affiliations. But we are going to be sticking with what we picked earlier. So our only affiliation that's not Thralls of Dracula is going to be Asgard. So we might as well take a look here, and in a thing like this, I think there's a couple really rude things we could do with the Crackback. So first of all, I think the Odin's Blessing obviously is going to be just a really good card. I think if you're playing Asgard, you should just be bringing this. It doesn't really matter what your game plan is. This card's just amazing. So yeah, we're definitely going to be including Odin's Blessing. I don't want to go too heavy on Asgard cards, but I do also want to take a look here at Doomed Prophecy, because crackbacks with Doomed Prophecy are going to be terrifying. Now, the biggest issue with this is that unfortunately, none of those characters actually have the ability to crackback. They're the other kind of annoying effects. So unfortunately, Doom Prophecy isn't actually going to make the cut here. But it's a really cool idea. And if we ever actually see an Asgard character with a proper crackback, right now the closest thing I could think of would be like Heimdall, where if they move close, he gets to hit them, which it's a pre-crack rather than a crackback. Um, Kind of a decent argument if you wanted to try to include him in this list as well. He could potentially be really interesting with something like that. But no, we're not going to go for that one. Similarly, I don't think we care too much for Trickster's Boon here. That's not going to be doing anything too crazy for us. And Rainbow Bridge, I don't think we really need either. So I think we're going to call that there for the Asgard cards. We're just going to bring Odin's Blessing. That way we're also not filling too many of our card slots here with things that we can only play at a couple specific threats anyways. So that's going to be it for that. We're going to go ahead and move on to character cards next. All right, so right out the gate, we're running Shang-Chi. We're going to be running Chi Mastery. It's just a really good card for him. Yeah, no notes. So we're going to be including that with him there. Yeah, that's a really easy pick to just kind of throw in here. So we'll do that. In the interests of basically making our opponent trying to do anything to us really obnoxious, we're gonna also throw in Giant's Blood here with Loki. Just being able to kind of be like, hey, you dared to come near Loki, or maybe even I threw you near Loki. Well, Loki is piecing out of here, and you're getting some conditions. So that's the game we're playing here. And yeah, just really solid card. Honestly, I think it's fantastic for Loki, so we'll definitely include that. And since we have a lot of slots still, I think we're going to also just throw Weapon X program in here. We're including Sabretooth in the list, and I think it's a reasonably solid card if we're playing him. Just throw him at something, deal damage to that something, no notes, that's good. So we can also use it for movement or whatever if we need to. But yeah, I think that's going to be our final character card there. Now, before we get into restricted cards, because of course we are going to be taking a couple of those, I also just realized I really like the idea of throwing Venomized in this list. And the reason why I like this is because some of these characters don't specify what attack they have to use on Crackback, so giving them access to a range 3 7 dice attack that's going to be healing them on their crackback is really solid. Of course, you're going to have to be careful. Lowering your energy defense by 2 is risky, especially if you're playing against an energy heavy team. Maybe don't bring this card if you're seeing Guardians on the other side of the table, for example. But still, I think this could be really interesting. It gives Dracula himself some extra crackback options at range 3 as well, because I believe it's only his spender that works at range 3 right now. So um, having access to this in his toolkit, even just for him, is mildly interesting. Of course, there's the cost of it. You have to, it's going to take an action. You're going to have to spend 3 power to get this going, but I think it could potentially have a lot of long-term value, and I also just really like this card, so we're going to include it because, yeah. All right, so going into restricted cards, the first one I want to include here is Sacrifice. And I think Sacrifice is going to be really meaningful in this list because obviously a lot of the time they're going to be trying to finish off kills where they can, because that's going to prevent you from crackbacking. So being able to kind of shove that over to another character and do the crackback, really meaningful. That becomes even more so if you have Gwenom in there. So yeah, that's going to potentially be a really useful card. And for the other slot, I think we're just going to include Brace here, just because it's Brace. It's a good card. We actually have a lot of good physical defense models, so I could see an argument to switch out for something else. Even something like Indom or something like that to stop them from like pushing or throwing you away from the attack before you get a chance to crack back. I could see a really strong argument for something like that, but I'm going to stick with Brace just because I feel like if I don't bring Brace, I'm going to regret it. So, yeah, we're gonna throw Brace here. And with that, we have one more slot for a generic card, and we should really make sure it's actually a generic card, because right now we're looking at one, two, three non-generic cards. So we better hope we're bringing our one of the characters on this list in every game. And for our generic card slot, we have a couple options. If Warpath was available still, I would 100% be picking that. That would feel really, really good for this list. But unfortunately, it is not, as far as I'm aware. That is one of the cards that was rotated out. Yeah, it is. So we're not going to be able to include Warpath. There's a small argument could be made for something like, what's it called? I'm blanking on the name. Fallback. That's the one. A small argument could be made for something like Fallback, but usually we want to be moving towards our opponent, not away from them. So there's some things to consider with stuff like that. And this one's honestly kind of a tough decision. I think you can go a few different ways with this, but I'm going to take a peek at some things and decide what we're doing. All right, that didn't take very long. Turned out I'd already spoken about most of the options I was considering for this one. So I think the kind of the easiest choice here is probably going to be Recalibration Matrix. We might be a little power starved to be able to use this as often as we would like to, but I think it's just going to be the one that helps most with our actual like themed plan here. But yeah, like stuff like Fallback or even something like Survival are totally viable options. Um, yeah, I think Recal is probably overall going to be the better play here. That's just my opinion though, of course. But yeah, that's gonna do it for our tactics cards. So last but not least, we're on to crises. And for crises, I don't think this is gonna be too hard. I want to include at least a couple 15s and maybe a 16 or two as well. So we have that Asgard option available to us. Just because I think having, we included tactics cards for it and everything, or a tactics card rather. So I think having that option is going to be nice to take advantage of, and I think it's actually going to be a really solid list on a lot of the 15 or 16 threat things. So yeah, I think we're pretty safe to include. I think we'll throw in Research Station as our extract there. It's also just going to make opponents that are scared of that to kind of shy away from picking our extracts, and generally speaking, it's usually more favorable to have your secures. So, always nice to have that just kind of scare people off if you have a solid plan for it yourself. And then I think for the secure side, we're gonna probably do Gamma. I could see an argument for Fisk, but I think the stuns are gonna hurt us really, really bad, so we don't want to deal with that. And I think we just go with Gamma. Outside of that, we do care about power a fair bit. So I think we're going to stay on the secures for a moment, and we're going to go ahead and grab Infinity Formula up as well. I think that one's going to be potentially really, really nice for us. So we'll take that. We can maybe get a lot of value out of that extra power, just leading to more crackbacks and things like that. In addition to that, I think there's an argument for a few different options here. I can almost see an argument for healing. The problem is your opponent's going to get to take advantage of that too. Um, but I think it could be really interesting to do something like demons, where our opponents are going to be on fire, so they're really going to have to think twice about making any sort of attack at us. Um, just because we're going to be hitting back super hard. Of course, they're going to be hitting us harder as well, so we got to be careful with that. That's not the place to be running Shang-Chi, where he needs to not take damage. But I think it's going to make our list really, really scary on the crackback. Speaking of making our list scary on the crackback, I think the next extract we're going to include is hammers, because yeah, let's make our free extra attacks that we are ideally making more attacks than our opponent. Um, let's make them extra dice because that's good. So we're gonna go ahead and include hammers there as well. And then sticking with the theme of we want power, we also want our opponents to really fear those crackbacks. We want their models to be on lower health more often so that those crackbacks are threatening lethal damage, especially if you've got, Gwenum in there for the double crackbacks or Loki for the skull pings and things like that. So I think if we really want to push that, we want something that does damage. We like power. Struggle for the Cube is doing both. So we're going to go ahead and include Struggle for the Cube here as well. And I think that gives us pretty good variety, and I think it's going to really confuse some opponents when they're looking at our scenarios as to which one's actually better for them, because we've got some fast scoring ones like Struggle for the Cube, but then they're risking Research Station, and then similarly here we have some spread out stuff like Infinity Formula, but Demons or Gamma can really screw over some more objective focused teams. So really, really, really posing some awkward questions to our opponent where they're probably not going to be happy with at least one of the options on either of our sides here. So always a good thing to kind of give your opponent those questions if they won the priority role. So we'll get to take advantage of that a little bit. that is going to do it for the list here. So in our final list here, we have Dracula leading the charge alongside Werewolf by Night, Daredevil, Killmonger, Sabretooth, Venom, Gwenom, Loki, Prince of Lies, Thor, Hero of Midgard, and Shang-Chi. And then for tactics cards, we're bringing in Thralls of Dracula for the Dracula affiliation, and Odin's Blessing for the Asgard affiliation. We've got Lethal Protector to allow Venom to protect things lethally. We have Chi Mastery for Shang-Chi. He's going to be really appreciating that, getting some easy staggers out there once in a while. We have Giant's Blood to keep Loki alive and also just kind of punish our opponents for daring to come near us. We got Weapon X program, just making Sabretooth hit that little bit harder on his turn if he needs to, or give him a little bit of extra mobility here and there. Venomized, because I think that could be really, really interesting, specifically on Dracula. I don't know if anyone else is getting too much value, because Werewolf specifies his attack. I think Daredevil does as well. Killmonger actually, no, he specifies as well. So yeah, they all specify except Dracula, so that card really is just there for Dracula. And no, Gwenom doesn't care because she already has a better version of that attack. So yeah, it's just there for him, but you know, it's there. Then we also have Sacrifice and Brace for our restricted cards. Sacrifice is going to pair really well with Gwenom, and Brace is just good. And then we have Recalibration Matrix, because what if we cracked back and we wished it was better, or what if they hit us and we weren't going to be able to crack back, so we'll recal so we can. Um, and yeah, that's gonna be our 10 cards there. For our crises, for our extracts, we're going with a research station for that Asgard 15. We got Fear Grips as worthy terrorized cities because we would like to hit harder, and Struggle for the Cube because we would like them to already be softened up and we would like the extra power, so when we hit back it really hurts. And then for our secures, we have Gamma again for the Asgard 15 there, Infinity Formula to allow us to fuel those crackbacks, and Demons Downtown just to again lay on that hurt when we are making those attacks. So yeah, I think this is a really interesting list, and as a huge sucker for crackbacks, as a sucker for, bodyguard abilities like Lethal Protector and obviously Sacrifice is just in the list. This list is very me. I absolutely adore everything this list is trying to do. It's including two of my favorite models in the game. Actually, you know what? I'm going to throw Shang-Chi in there too. Three of my favorite models in the game. Just fantastic. But yeah, I hope you guys are a fan of this sort of thing as well. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on the list are down below. What would you guys have done differently? Particularly, those four slots we were kind of at the end, like, hey, these could be a lot of different things. This is what I'm going with. Very curious to see what versions of this you guys might have built. If you guys have tried a list like this in the past and seen, varying levels of success or failure, very curious to hear your stories with it. This is definitely one that I would be very curious to try out because I just think this would be so much fun to play. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how this would actually play out, and it's definitely something once that box comes out and I have my hands on it, I'm going to try building up a version of this myself because this seems like it's right up my alley for lists. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me for this roster building video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do discussion focused content like this on the weekdays, and we got battle reports on the weekends. So if you're a fan of any of that sort of thing, feel free to jump on in. But that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.